Question 13. Which of the following cases would be the best authority for the claim that QUT owes a duty of care to students when they're on campus? This could be a little bit tricky, but let's kind of rule out what we know it's not. These are all authorities around duty of care. I think they're all authorities around duty of care. So why don't I have a look at my handy dandy tip sheet. Here we are in duty of care. And for this sheet, I've actually underlined the cases that are in the slide. So I've been through and make sure I understand the cases that I'll need for authority that's expected for me to know. They're the ones in the slides, and I've underlined these as well as the other ones I have for explanation. So in the particular question that we've got, we're being asked from two things in two ways to match. So we've got to match QUT with students coming onto campus. What relationship is that with the right authority? So Australian Safeways and Zelazny is occupiers, people entering. So I can definitely see QUT would be an occupier and the students would be coming on campus. So it could be an occupier entrant duty of care that's actually owed. That's definitely there. Donoghue and Stevenson. Donoghue and Stevenson, we know, is about manufacturer consumer. It also is used as the classic case for reasonable foreseeability. So there's some argument that that is reasonable authority, but remember that it's better to say, look, it is an established category, right? The occupier entrant, we don't need to do this other test. So that would probably be a better authority than Donoghue and Stevenson. Because remember, we would also need to make sure if we were arguing that it wasn't an established category, we'd have to be arguing that there's reasonable foreseeability in the salient features of the case together make it up. And Donoghue and Stevenson is really just the authority there that we're using it for is that reasonable foreseeability. So it's not the kind of whole answer. So A is a better answer than B. Borehill and Young again is used for reasonable foreseeability. So again, we'd have the same kind of arguments that it's in the ballpark, but it's not the best answer that we could come up with for the authority here. Hedley, Byrne and Heller, I won't go back to the handy dandy sheet, but that's negligent misstatement, and we know that this is not about a statement. And then Agar and Hyde, we're using as an authority in terms of the voluntary assumption of risk, so it's not about that. Given all of those factors, I'm going to go with A is our answer, Australian Safeways and Zeluna. Question 14. Colin is injured in a car accident caused by Dylan speeding and hitting him. Colin incurred $3,000 in medical expenses, $4,000 in lost wages, $5,000 in damage to his car, and $1,000 due to an online gambling addiction he developed while he was at home recovering and not able to work. What damages is a court likely to award to Colin for Dylan's negligence? Okay, so what we've got to say, take for granted, is that Dylan is negligent. This is a small question for 1 mark, so I'm going to go, I don't have to show that Dylan's been negligent. It's just what's the level of damages. So we remember that to show the damage, what we actually need to show is causation. So which of these costs were caused by Dylan's negligence? The $3,000 in medical expenses is a direct cause. A direct cause is also $4,000. Now, you remember that we're using two elements to the test. Let me go to our handy-dandy hint sheet to make that a bit clearer for everyone. We're dealing with causation. Did the defendant's action cause the harm? We need factual causation, the but-for test. The but-for test that the courts use is but for Dylan's negligence, the harm to Colin would not have been caused. So that's how we use the but-for test. So but for the negligence of Dylan, the $3,000 in medical expenses for Colin would not have been suffered. And that's true, right? There's a direct cause. But for Dylan's negligence, the $4,000 in lost wages wouldn't have occurred. I think that's true. But for Dylan's negligence, the damage to the car wouldn't have occurred. Yeah, that's a direct result of the injury. But for Dylan's negligence, Colin wouldn't have suffered $1,000 for online gambling addiction. Well, actually, that doesn't really follow, right? For the factual causation there. The sole reason for the gambling addiction, that gambling addiction might have occurred irrespective of whether or not he was injured. Okay, so there's a separate kind of event. Even if we weren't sure about that, we need to be aware that the second element is it reasonably foreseeable, right? The reasonable foreseeability test. So even if we're a little unsure, we can say, is it reasonably foreseeable that someone would have medical expenses if they're injured in a car accident? Yes. Is it reasonably foreseeable that they would lose wages through being off work? Yes. Is it reasonably foreseeable that someone would have their car damaged if there was a negligent accident? Yes. Is it reasonably foreseeable that someone would develop an online gambling addiction? No, I don't think that's there. So I think the liability is going to be 3 and 4 is $7,000 plus $5,000 is $12,000. D is my answer, right? I'm taking out, I don't think there's going to be liability for this online gambling addiction. Final multiple choice question. Izzy is employed by Jade to deliver pizzas from her restaurant using Jade's car. Late one Friday night, Izzy is doing 100 in a 60 zone so she could get the pizza there on time. Izzy had an accident. Which of the following statements is correct? So we can see Izzy is employed by Jade. So what's this about, right? It's whether Jade, all these questions are asking, is Jade liable for Izzy? So is the employer liable for what the employee did? And we know, hopefully, we know that that is a vicarious liability problem, right? Vicarious liability. Now, 2 key things that we want to know is it about an employer-employee relationship is a clear one where it arises. And second, that acts that are done in the normal course of employment, in an authorized act, gives rise to vicarious liability, even if it's done in an unauthorized manner. Okay, so let's go back to this. Jade is not liable for Izzy as she was speeding. No, that's not necessarily true, right? Because the speeding is carrying out the act in an unauthorized manner. And she actually is authorized to deliver pizzas. So therefore, that's not necessarily true. And you can look at the Century Insurance case to understand that. Jade is not liable for Izzy as her written employment contract said she must comply with the road rules. Again, that's not necessarily true. Just because you carry out something in an unauthorized way doesn't mean that the employer won't be liable. Jade is liable for Izzy as Izzy was an employee acting within the course of her employment. I think that that's true. Jade is liable for Izzy as Izzy was driving a car owned by Jade. No, it's got nothing to do with who owns the car. You know, that kind of comes a little bit into control, but it's not the main reason. Jade can choose whether or not she's liable for Izzy. No. In fact, it's a pretty stupid question, right? Because Jade's always going to choose she's not. Well, unless she's exceptionally moral, but let's not go there. So I think the clear answer is C, right? Even though she was speeding, she was carrying out an authorized act in her employment, that of delivering pizzas. So she will be liable. So that's the end of our multiple choice section. Next, we're going to go on and have a look at the letter element that might be in the exam.